When you look at organisms in the world, they're complex. You look at life cycles of organisms. You got frogs coming from tadpoles. Tadpoles are complex things, and then they transform into frogs. Long before people looked at the inside of organisms, they recognized that there was a lot of complexity in organisms. You look at mosses, they go like a caterpillar to a moth. The mosses go through several life cycles, steps in their life cycle. The fungi are even better. They're really cool. They go through 4 or 5 different steps in their life cycle, at least when they do a complete one. Life is terribly complex, but biological complexity has always been a challenge to evolutionary theory. According to evolutionary theory, again, natural selection and mutation is what's responsible for everything. It's got to be what's responsible for complexity. But according to the Bible, it's a wise creator, one who is smarter than all of that complexity, one who has the power to put all that complexity together, that brings that complexity into being. It is an astonishing amount of complexity, mind-boggling, and it's an ancient problem. It's one Aristotle struggled with. How do you explain this complexity? There is, in the early 19th century, in the Bridgewater treatises, which were arguments for a God, for a creator, a publication called The Hand, which argued from the design of the structure of the human hand that it was created by God. It is so complex. All this manipulative power and ability is just amazing. And Darwin, it is said several times, he stopped while he was writing and contemplated his hand, and in his words, he shuddered. There were times when he thought about the complexity of the hand that was capable of writing out this thesis that he was working on. Maybe he wasn't right. Maybe that complexity is too great to be explained by evolution. And then he'd get back in his not right mind and continue. But he had no idea what complexity was there. Because what we have discovered in biological complexity is orders of magnitude greater than the complexity that was known in Darwin's day. Darwin thought that inside a cell was just protoplasm, nothing complicated. It was simple. That's why people were willing to say that cells came from non-living things. But as we begin to get into a cell, we realize, whoa, this is really, really complex. I try to use an analogy with my students. Imagine what it would take to build an orbiting city around the world. What would it take? You need some shell to protect us from radiation. You need something that produces oxygen. You need, and it goes on and on. Yet, every component found in that city is found in a one-celled organism. The complexity is mind-boggling. And this is just an example of metabolism inside E. coli, which is a simple bacterium that lives in our digestive system and helps us eat things, digest things. This is a partial diagram of some of the chemical reactions that are going on inside E. coli. A simple bacterium, just a one-celled organism. Here's yeast. Yeast that is decaying vegetable matter to make alcohol, for example. Each one of these lines, intersections of lines, is a chemical reaction, a unique chemical reaction that has unique molecules used to accomplish that reaction. They occur in a particular pattern, a particular order. One has to come before the other, and there's options. If the conditions are this way, you can go to the right. If the conditions are the other way, you go to the left. The system is terribly complex, and this is just metabolism. This is not everything in the yeast. Biological complexity has grown more complex the more we learn about it, and it's only going to get worse, if you wish. It's certainly too complex for any natural process to come. We have never seen anything in the world naturally produce complexity it's even anywhere close to the complexity of biological organisms. But it would be explained by a God who is all knowledge. The other thing that's really cool about this, when I try to explain these things to my students, I find myself using analogies from our world. For example, when I'm trying to describe the light-dependent reactions of photosynthesis, the chloroplast's action of pumping hydrogen ions into the middle of the thylakoid membrane is very much like a hydroelectric plant that exists down in Tennessee in the United States. Tennessee Valley Authority buys their own electricity at night when it's cheaper, pumps water up to the top of the mountain into a lake, and then during the day, when electricity is more expensive, they run the water down through generators that produce electricity. They sell the electricity to people at the higher rate, and they make money. The chloroplasts do the same sort of thing. They pump hydrogen ions into the inside of this thylakoid membrane, and then it builds up to where they flow out and they produce ATP, which is analogous to electricity. In fact, they have it flow out through a particular molecule known as ATP synthase. Really cool molecule. It's a molecule with a chamber, a tube, and then above the tube there is an object that spins. The hydrogen ions go through the tube, causing this thing to spin, and it actually generates these ATP molecules, which are functioning sort of like electricity, as I said. This looks just like a hydroelectric generator, which has got a hole through which water runs and causes something to turn, which we use to generate electricity. The similarity is astounding between this molecule and an electrical generator. Then when I get to the Calvin cycle, where the plant is taking carbon from carbon dioxide and sticking it up against other carbons and building a sugar molecule, it does it in a cycle that is very much like the cycle of an engine, where one piston is moving up, it is closing another piston's cylinder, and this goes back and forth to allow the system to keep going. The analogies, well, they really do help the students understand. And thus, these biological complexity is very astonishingly similar to complex designs by humans. That's pretty cool. We don't even fully understand these things. There are something in excess of 500 chemical steps in photosynthesis. We understand 50. We understand only 10% of photosynthesis. Not only can we not figure out how it formed, we haven't even figured out the full complexity of it yet. That diagram, that complex diagram I showed you of metabolism, has not been worked out for photosynthesis. It's bigger than that. And that happens in a chloroplast, which is inside a cell. It's a millionth of a meter in diameter. It is the object that does this all the time. But it would be explained by a God who is all knowledge.